Hey everybody, how are you all? Glad you guys all came here. Thank you. We are here at the Claverack Free Library in Columbia County. This is stop number, I think, 22, of 62 counties in that area. 20-something, I think, 22. We are rocking along, trying to cover the state as I always do. This trip was 4 days, 12 stops. And we're not done. We'll be back out here again next weekend and a couple weekends after that, doing it all over again to keep moving forward. And why in the world would I be doing this? Because I have to walk the walk if I'm going to talk the talk. I keep saying how counties matter, how local matters. I keep saying that. You keep hearing me say that. And if I'm going to actually believe that and say that, I've got to go out here and I've got to visit all the counties. I've got to be the guy who actually walks the walk, and that's what I'm trying to do. Today, I wanted to talk more, or this time I want to talk more about something that I don't talk about that often. Now, believe it or not, that's the First and Second Amendment. I often talk about solutions. That's what I usually do. Someone has a problem or a concern, I bring up a solution, right? You guys hear me talk about policy all day long. I'm the policy guy. There's a problem, here's my solution. There's a problem, here's my solution. But I do want to bring up the idea of both the First and Second Amendments. I think it does matter. It's a little bit wonky, maybe, but I think it matters. I used to tease all the time and say in New York State, the Second Amendment, that's like the second suggestion. Ha, 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 right? They give the laugh, I get that laugh often. It's true, right? And it's kind of true, right? We were in the car talking about, we had an event before talking about, in certain counties, it's easier to get a permit for a pistol. Certain counties it's harder. And I said, New York City, they arrest you for asking, right? You requested it, 30 days, 30 days at Rikers. How dare you even ask, right? Don't even ask. You go to prison, you go to jail for asking. Now, the average person says, Larry, why do you care about the Second Amendment so much? You don't own a firearm. I don't. I live in New York City. Why would I? I'm asking to go to jail. For those who don't know, if I actually got a permit in New York City, we actually have rules with how long you can be out of your home. So if I actually go to a range and then I get stuck in traffic, I go to jail. That's how New York City rolls. So why in the world would I do that, right? They try to make it impossible to own a firearm, and they win. They've made it like that way, so I'm not. That's true, right? Because you're like, why do you care? There are some reasons why I care. I'll go just from the city, then I'll go out of the city. In the city, why do I care? If you live in an urban area, you think about who gets mugged, who gets knocked over the head, who gets their stuff stolen. Who is that person? It's almost always one of two people: elderly or mother with kids. Almost every time, like 99% of the time, if someone's getting mugged or assaulted or accosted, they're elderly or they're a woman with kids. Now, that does not include gang violence. It's different. Gang violence is usually young men killing young men. Almost always has gang violence. Different. I'm not talking about gang violence. I'm talking about the person who is not a gang member, who isn't in the game, right? That person's not in the game. This person's just going to school, going to work, coming home, going shopping, whatever. So is that person. Why? Why?
They're vulnerable.
Because they are vulnerable, correct. Because they are vulnerable. That's the reason why. The funny part is, I grew up in a bad neighborhood. And I will go back to bad neighborhoods often. I still do sometimes, and I don't really care. I'm fine with it. Why? I've never felt vulnerable. I've never felt that I'm not in the game, so I'm not a target. And I'm not vulnerable, so I'm not a target. That's how I've always felt. But now as I get older, oh, I'm going to be a target soon. Now I'm going to be a target. So imagine if just one time, some older person, man, woman, whatever, drew down on some thug trying to knock off with their cart and take their money. Just once. Change the game. Change the game. Those firearms are actually equalizers. That's what they are. They're equalizers. Larry, do you want to arm all the old people? No, not at all. Never. Not one policy I've ever said ever would force anybody to do anything. If you don't want to own a firearm, please don't own one. It's a right, not a requirement. If you want it, awesome. If you don't, no worries. I don't have to have every person who's over 65 to have a firearm. Just need one or two. So I just need one or two. I just need one to draw down on one guy one time. That's all I need. And all of a sudden now, they're not soft targets anymore. They're not soft targets anymore. Well, I'll go one step further. Larry, I don't live in a city. Why do I care? Okay. How about something else? Spousal abuse. How about that? Generally speaking, not a 100% rule, but about a 90% rule, 95% rule. The spouse who's physically abused is the weaker spouse. Usually the woman, but sometimes the male, but usually the woman. She's usually physically weaker, so she's abused by the physically stronger one. How's she gonna stop him? How's she gonna stop him? She's gonna get a piece of paper that the cops say, you can't touch me. So when he comes after her, she shows the paper and goes, see, you can't touch me. Well, one thing it will do, when he kills her, he'll go to jail longer. That's true. He'll go to jail longer when he kills her. But if she's got a firearm, maybe he won't. Maybe he won't. It's an equalizer. Larry, I don't want an equalizer. I think it's wrong. No worries, don't have one. A story I tell often. True story. I used to be a teacher. There was a teacher who worked with me, and she was an absolute and total pacifist, and I mean completely pacifist. She said, Larry, I would never shoot anybody. I would never kill anybody, ever. And of course, one of the teachers goes, well, what if you got raped? Of course, he says that. And she said, I'm not making this up. She said, even in that case, I would not do it. She goes, and this is what she said. She goes, I was in that situation. She said, and I talked my way out of it. And I would rather talk my way out of it. And if I couldn't talk my way out of it, her words, she said, I'd rather be raped than kill someone. And I said, okay, let me ask you a question. I stepped in at this point. I said, okay, let me ask you a question. Would you stop someone else from shooting that person, from killing that person, from choosing to murder, or I shouldn't say murder, to kill that person instead of being raped? She said, of course not. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. You live your values and allow others to live their values. Personally, I'd rather shoot the guy. But that's me. If you feel that much that you would never take a life and that you would rather be assaulted yourself, good on you. That's on you. Live your values. This is what libertarian's about. It's not about converting people. It's about allowing people to be themselves. Allowing people to be as liberal or as conservative as they want to be. Just don't force use on others. If you want to carry a firearm, you should be able to carry one. If you don't want to carry one, you shouldn't. That's what the Second Amendment's about. So people choosing if they want to. No, the Second Amendment is not about guns. It doesn't say guns. What does it say? Arms. It doesn't say guns. That's why, believe it or not, in New York City, you can now use nunchucks. They used to be against the law. Nunchucks are arms. If you don't defend yourself and think you're I don't know, Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan, okay, do you, man? You think that's the way you're gonna stop a bad guy with nunchucks? Hey, do what you gotta do. I'm okay with that. But that's the point. But once you start breaking that Second Amendment because it doesn't make sense, or who needs it, or it's dangerous, or the greater good, there's a reason why the Second Amendment's second, not third, fourth, or fifth. It's second because it protects the first, which is the most important. Because of all the rights we have, all of them, they're all important. But hands down, if you don't have freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of association, freedom of press, and freedom to talk to your government, you don't have a country worth a damn, period. That's the number one of all of them. They're all important, but without that, what do we have? We don't have anything. That's the number one of all of them. Then the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment. That's what it's supposed to do. So you say, well, Larry, you're talking Second Amendment. Why are you going to First Amendment? Because once you make the Second Amendment a suggestion, it's very easy to make the First Amendment a suggestion. And we're here right now in our state. We're making a suggestion. We're making a suggestion. Well, Larry, you can't have a gun because it's dangerous. Larry, you can't have a gun because of the overall greater good. Well, Larry, now it's COVID. So you can't meet with the people you want to meet with. Greater good, too dangerous. What's the difference? What's the difference? We're going to shut down churches. Why? Greater good, too dangerous. You can't meet people. Greater good, too dangerous. Literally talking about not, you can't have ceremonies in your own home. Remember that from last year? Yeah. Think about that this year. You can't have more than 10 people in your own home. Greater good, dangerous. That's my point. We're making it to whether the First Amendment is now a suggestion. I'm not okay with that, because once you make the First and Second Amendment suggestions, we don't have a Bill of Rights. We have a Bill of Suggestions. That's what we have. We have a Bill of Suggestions. And once you have that, do we even have a country? Do we even have one? And my answer will be no. One I'm not happy about living in. How about that, Gary? One I'm not happy for us to be living in. That's what I would say. Yes. And that's when I'm bringing this up. I know I'm being maybe a little, I'm being more philosophical than usual. I know. But it's something I haven't talked about much, and I wanted to bring that up. This is why when people say, Larry, are you against, lockdowns? Are you against vaccines? Are you against mandates? Are you against masks? Are you against all these things? I wrap it up in one thing. I am pro-consent. That's what I am. Pro-consent. That's it. Why would you say that? I gave up a lot of my rights. I did. I joined the Marine Corps. Any of you join the service, you give up your rights. They tell you where to go. You don't have freedom of movement. You don't. You're not, I'm going to Germany. No, you're not. You're going where we tell you. Private. That's where you're going. We tell you where you're going. I want freedom of speech. No, you don't. I tell you to shut up, you shut up. I'm not joking, right? You join the military, you surrender your rights. Well, that's okay. It's consensual. I agreed to it. I signed a contract. I'm okay. And I got out of it eventually, right? That's okay. So am I against someone, deciding that they want to put a mask on or get a vaccine or whatever you think is right? You consent. In fact, I'm actually okay with you surrendering your rights as long as you consent. I don't mind. It's up to you. My worry is when someone says, you may not, you cannot, and you're like, I didn't agree to that. That's a problem. Libertarians have a very important mantra that we stand by, and it's really important. Good ideas don't require force. Good ideas don't require force. Larry, what if I want my neighbors to be more liberal? Or what if I want my neighbors to be more conservative? Or what if I want my neighbors to be more the way I am, insert thing you are, to follow the rules that I follow? No worries, you can do that. That's the First Amendment. That's literally the First Amendment. You assemble, you speak, you use the press, and you try to convince your neighbors without force to be whatever you want them to be. And that's fine, legal, and the way to do things. If I want you to be more like me, great, no worries. I should use my example, my communication, my community. I should use all those things. That's what I should be using to get you to be more like me. And if I can't get you to do that, what am I doing? Now it's force. What you hear people say all the time is, Larry, it's not force. We voted. You've heard that before? Yes. That's not force, it's the law. It's not force, it's the law, it's not force. I cannot stress enough. At the end of every single law, it's a guy or a gal with a gun who will put you in a cage. And if you don't want to go in that cage, they're going to shoot you. So you're going to the morgue or the hospital. So at the end of all laws, maybe some exceptions, prison, hospital, morgue. Lose, lose, lose. Are you prepared? Are you prepared to make that happen for a law? Sometimes yes. Sometimes yes. I'm not saying there should be no laws. I'm not saying there should be no laws. But how far will you push things like, I'm mad? Prison should be for people who we're afraid of, not for people we're mad at. Right? That's what prison should be for. For people we're afraid of, not people we're angry with. We have to move towards that. Our amendments do matter. Our Bill of Rights does matter. It is important. What do we say in the Libertarian Party all the time? All of your rights all of the time. All of your rights all of the time. That's what we say. And as one begins to go away, we see the other going away. The last piece I'll bring up. Larry, why do we do this? The government's evil, it's taking everything away. Not really. To be fair, not really. If you think about most Americans, what we're angry about, particularly libertarians, everything we're mad about, comes from one thing only: afraid Americans. Everything we hate about this country, we get mad about, always comes from one thing: afraid Americans. War on drugs, afraid Americans. War on terror, afraid Americans. Right? You name the thing you don't like, afraid Americans. Regulations on this, afraid Americans. Regulations on that, afraid Americans. Right? Always the same. We're afraid, we do things that aren't good. People who are afraid make bad decisions. That's what we do. So I don't want to make you afraid. I'd like you to feel safe. You make better decisions. Why do I spend so much time talking about happiness for this issue? Happy Americans, in this case, happy New Yorkers, don't leave New York. Happy New Yorkers start families, build businesses, have great careers, retire here, don't commit crimes, and don't make bad decisions that affect other people. Happy people don't do any of those things. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, also part of our founding documents. Remember something: life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness came before the Bill of Rights. Does that make sense? That came before the Bill of Rights. Then came the Articles, then came the Constitution, then came the Bill of Rights. That's the most important piece. So guys, thank you so much for hearing me talk my philosophy. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, I do want to open up the floor for any questions or comments about either what I said or what's going on in this county or in New York State. Any questions or comments from the audience about what I was talking about? And remember my rules, though. I do have very specific rules on taking questions. One very hardcore rule: no rules. So any question is open, please. Say again? Yeah, exactly, yes. So I'm going to make rules now, Larry. I'm libertarian. Go ahead, Gary.
Okay, so you said we should reserve prisons for people who are afraid of it.
Yes.
I would go one step further. That
Tell me.
Objectively dangerous to us as well.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Gary. What I used was a cool soundbite. It's not 100% accurate, right? There are exceptions, of course, but it's a cool soundbite, right? Prison should be for people we're afraid of, not who we're angry. But yeah, I mean, in theory, prison can be people who break contracts. In theory, it could be people who are actively dangerous. It could be for many reasons, but it's a cool soundbite. You're right. Point taken. Point taken. Go ahead.
Two comments I think you'll agree with in terms of restraining the government overreach.
Mm-hmm.
Not just consent is necessary, but informed consent.
Oh, very good point.
And you're not just against force, but you're against fraud.
Yes, thank you for that. Let me bring up both of those points. Thank you. Very good point. The first one is, I do want people to have informed consent. And I'll give you an example. Some people, I bring this example up often. Would I accept any regulations on the Second Amendment? Right? I would. But only if it is, to your point, to make informed consent, meaning to regulate, make the market regular. An example I bring up often is this. Let's say, for example, people start buying more firearms. And people who are ignorant of firearms start buying more firearms. And they start hurting themselves from the recoil. And they start complaining. I'm hurting myself from all the recoils. Pain. Oh, I got pain in my arm from recoils. So they talk to their they start complaining. We need to know what's, harsh recoil or something. We need to make a harsh recoil, but we don't understand. We're ignorant. So if all of a sudden some legislator said, hey, let's make a law or regulation that the firearms industry has to somehow regulate itself and put a note that shows how much recoil a firearm has, right? And red, orange, green or something, or whatever, levels 1 to 10 or something like that. Am I going to fight that regulation? Probably not. That's not something I'm going to fight on. You can still buy whatever you want. You can ignore it if you want to, but it would allow for the industry to regulate itself and to say, hey, look, this is the big boom boom, this is the little boom boom, pick the one you want. I'm not gonna go crazy over that, right? That's regular second-handed because under your, I could see that as that's getting more informed consent for the consumer. So that type of regulation, I'm not gonna fight over that. That's not worthy of a fight. That's something that I could put underneath that piece. But your second piece is fraud. Let me go down the same road. Let's say the firearm industry decides to regulate something. They're gonna have big boom boom versus middle boom boom and little boom boom, whatever that is, right? They decide that. Well, what if they actually purposefully, one manufacturer didn't care and then put the wrong label on and put the little boom boom on the big boom boom? That's fraud. And that's wrong. You don't want to lie to your consumer. Let your consumer know, this is what I have. This is what it is. And this goes actually to the point I mentioned also. When it comes to the state licensing people, the state can just credential people. I don't mind that. Credential, let you work without a credential. No worries. You can still work. You don't have the government credential, but you can still work. But if you lie and put that government credential on your front of your store and you don't have that credential, that's fraud, right? The community should decide, do they care about the credential or not? If the consumer cares about the credential and you put the credential on your storefront and you don't have it, you're right. That's fraud. That's a crime. Absolutely. Force, coercion, fraud. 100%. Fraud is a crime. Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yes. You have something else, Gary? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say that it's less of a regulation and more of a standard, a public standard.
Yes, exactly. And I'm okay with that. I'm not gonna, that's not a fight a hill I'm ready to die on. Right? As long as I'm not infringing on your ability to purchase the firearm that you want, I'm not gonna die on that hill. Just not. It's not a hill I'm gonna die on. I'll let that one go.
I was thinking more about fraud perpetrated by the US government.
Give me an example.
Biden standing up and making claims about the vaccines and promoting boosters when the FDA, the advisory committee of the FDA voted.
So hold on, let me say what we're getting here. So you're saying that you don't want, I think all fraud is bad. Why are you making a distinction between government and non-government?
Fraud.
Yes, as of course, yeah. But the problem with that is, you're right. The problem with that is, whenever you have that, the only way of fixing that is creating another option. Otherwise, government is watching government. That doesn't work. Government doesn't punish government, right? What government does is find one scapegoat, put that person in prison, and then change nothing except give that other thing more money, right? So if the FDA screws up, they find one scapegoat, maybe, put them in prison, or fine them, if anything, then they give the FDA more money, right? That's how it actually works. So I'm with you, but the only way you change that is not by me saying, I'll punish the FDA. The way I fix it is by allowing the FDA to exist. Still exists, but it isn't the only thing, and it has no actual power. In other words, it has a credentialing authority. That's it. Can your product or service come into the market without the FDA? It should be able to. Does the FDA credentialing matter or not? Can we have other credentialing? Larry, then people will die all day, and they'll take the wrong food, and they'll take the wrong everything. I have examples of that being completely wrong. It's called health food stores, natural food stores in the United States right now. Most of the products in those stores are not FDA approved. Where are all the deaths? Where are all the dismemberments? The FDA has killed and maimed far more Americans than all the health food stores ever created in the entire country since the beginning of time. Not even close. I mean, by tens, if not hundreds, if not thousands. It's just so different. FDA has killed far more people, maimed far more people. Not even close. Why? They have independent agencies that check their stuff. So what we should do is not destroy the FDA, let it exist. But it exists as only a credentialing body. That's it. And we have other bodies that also credential. And then the individual consumers decide, what do they care about? Will I only buy FDA approved stuff? Up to you. You choose. I don't. But will I buy other things? Up to you. You choose. I don't. But in either case, if someone buys a product, Larry, then we'll buy products and people will die. Let's assume you're right. Assume I buy a product and I get sick or my family gets sick, someone gets sick. If it's a private company and a private organization, what will happen? I'll sue them and probably get money and they might actually go under that to change. How do I know that? Tylenol. That's how I know that. Tylenol. Remember Tylenol? Tylenol back in the 80s, they had that problem where people were dying from taking Tylenol, literally dying from taking Tylenol. Remember that? That scam what happened back then? They were like, oh my God, we got sabotaged. What did they do? They made changes. For those of you who are younger, you may not realize those plastic tops that were in your bottles when you buy medicine weren't always there. You just open it up, it was there.
The tamper-proofing.
The tamper-proofing. Who did that? Tylenol led the way on that. The private market did, not the government. The private market did. When something went wrong, they had to fix it or Tylenol would have went under. So Tylenol said, we got sabotaged and they made a change and the entire industry changed. Literally overnight. The whole industry changed overnight. And now you see it. If this is tamper-proof, it's broken, please bring this bottle back to the store. That's Tylenol. Everyone else follow. That's not the government. But the FDA produces something that kills you. What happens? Nothing. Nothing. 80% of all addicts in this country come from an FDA-approved drug painkiller. The FDA is literally killing millions of Americans, has been doing so for decades. What's the recourse? Nothing. I'll give you one more. Remember ephedra? Remember ephedra? Ephedra, all of a sudden there was someone, I forgot, some athlete I think, had a heart problem and died. They had ephedra. All of a sudden I was like, oh my God, ephedra, it might be bad. I don't think ephedra is that bad, but it doesn't matter. People thought it was that bad. What did the health food stores do? You remember that? Pulled it out of the health food stores immediately. Couldn't buy it anymore. That was not government banning it. That was the market going, oh my God, they pulled it all out. How many opioids are killing Americans to this day? Tons. Are they pulled from all the shelves? Can you no longer get prescriptions? Of course you can. Hasn't stopped. But ephedra kills one or two athletes, boom, it's pulled from the shelf, all comes out, no one's doing it anymore. It's all in health food stores, gone. The market actually acted faster and there was recourse. So there must be multiple agencies. Government can still exist, it's fine. But if people don't care about it, it won't become valuable anymore. Government either becomes better or it goes away. Thank you. That makes sense at least? So yes, that's how we fix that. Helping government doesn't work. Any other questions out there? Please go ahead.
When talking to my friends on the left about, the libertarian ideas, I try to use your words like, the life from your pursuit of happiness. But they throw it back at me saying, well, your pursuit of happiness is on my life. That, they think of government as like the referee and the authority, and they don't trust people to help each other. So how do you, explain further?
No, I love that. I love that. And you see this all the time, particularly with people who with the COVID is the biggest issue, right? No. We have to mandate so I can protect people, right? We have to mandate to protect people. I get that completely. That is an emotion that makes total sense, right? If you don't get vaccinated, then I'll get the disease and then I'll die, right? I get the emotion in that completely. What I would ask you is, if you get someone to act in a certain way by threatening them, do they believe in the action? They don't, whatever it is. If I say, tell me that you love blue. Blue is the best color in the world. And I got a gun. You go, blue's great, Larry. Oh my God, it's the best color ever, right? I got a gun in your face. Of course you say that. Do you really believe blue is the greatest color? Probably not. So now when a gun goes down, do you still believe, do you tell people that blue is the right color? Of course not. So let's assume from all these vaccines are amazing. They're awesome. They're going to save us all. Let's go down 3 roads. Vaccines are amazing, awesome, going to save us all. They are the best in the world. Or 2, they help some people, somebody, whatever. Or they're bad. One of those 3. All 3 of those. Let's say they're amazing and awesome and great. I personally don't know, so I'm going to go all 3 of those. If they are, and I force him and I force him and I force you to take it. Now the next virus comes. It's worse than this one. You can take the vaccine? No, you're not. In fact, now you remember when you were forced. You remember that and you're mad at me. Now you're going to find ways of either lying, cheating, stealing. That's how it works every single time. Guaranteed now, right? Whenever you force perfection, you will get deception every single time. So I start forcing you all. You might do it this time because I got the gun out. Next time comes, I'm not taking it. And if these vaccines are amazing and awesome and great, now you're dying and hurting others. Let's say they're mediocre. They're okay. They do the help people, don't, whatever, whatever. Let's say that's what they are. Okay, great. Why would I force you then? What's the logic in forcing you? Still doesn't work. Let's say they're terrible. They don't really work. They hurt more than they help or whatever. Let's say that's the case. How bad am I? Either way, force is not the answer. Does that make sense? Regardless of what your view on vaccines are, force is not the answer. But there's something worse. And people get mad, I know, all the time. But I'm going back to my Second and First Amendment piece. Once the government can force you to do so, what can't they? That's the most important piece. Once they can force you, what can't they? Look at my next piece, though. Your decisions affect my life. That's what they would say. Yeah, lots of them do. What some of the leftovers will tell me is, we live in a society, Larry. And I go, you're right, we live in a society. And what you do affects me. Yes, every single thing you do affects me too. Everything we all do affects everybody. Am I wrong? It's true. Of course it is. The question is, at what point do you say no? At what point do we draw a line? And that's a hard line to draw. There's no question. That's a tough line to draw. Here's where I draw it. I draw it in what I put in my body, what I put in my children's body. That's where I draw that line. Because in theory, what if some of you decide, you know what? I want to ride a motorcycle. I want to ride a motorcycle. Okay, great. The odds of you having a motorcycle accident are higher of you getting hurt or dying than if you're in a car or in a large car. You're affecting me. You're affecting me by driving a motorcycle. Can I stop you now? In theory, maybe. If you have a motorcycle accident, what if I'm behind you? And now I get into an accident, maybe I die or I get hurt. Now I know I'm being a little hyperbolic in this, but you get my point. Why should I let you drop out of airplanes? What if your chute doesn't work? You're gonna die. What if you fall on top of me? All those, and we can keep going down that road forever. So I'm not saying that their emotion isn't true and right. It is. I get it. We should not be upset at people when they think that. They're just trying to care about it, right? And I understand it completely. I agree with them. Emotionally, I do. But at one point, you've got to realize, look, when you tell me what to put in my body, isn't that too far? But Larry, you can protect yourself with the vaccine. Okay, no worries. Then can't you also? Then why can't you do what's required to protect yourself? And if you're worried about me, no worries. You don't have to hang around me if you don't want to. It's up to you. But how about something else? Why don't we instead just care about consent and talk to each other? Here's the most important thing. I literally carry a mask in my pocket. I should do this all the time. Carry my pocket. Why do I carry it in my pocket? Because some people want me to wear a mask when I talk to them, particularly in New York City. A lot of people in the city care about masking. They do. I get it. Keep it in my pocket. If someone says, hey, you got a mask? I put it on. If I'm in an Uber or a car, I put it on if they ask me to. Of course I do. Why? Because they asked. It's consent. They're not ordering me to. They're asking me to. I'll put it on. I want you to feel safe. Plus, I don't know your background. What if you have a problem or history? Maybe what if you lost somebody of COVID and you're scared? I don't know what's going on in your life. So I'll put it on. It's fine. Put it back in my pocket when I'm done. No mind at all. No worries whatsoever. Why do people fight so much about masks? Because they don't work. No, because they were forced. That's why. Most people don't actually know if masks work. The average American has no idea. Some people have done homework and know. But the average American has no idea. The people who say no, because they were forced. The people who say yes, I think it's the right thing to do. The average American has no idea. The average American has no idea if the vaccines work. They don't. The average American doesn't. Some people have done homework, some people do. Most don't. Most just believe whoever they heard and they trust. They watch the YouTube video or they watch TV or whatever they think appropriate. It's someone they trust that person says they work or they don't work, and they believe them. That's most Americans. Probably 80%, I would guess, are literally just what the person who I trust said it's good or it's bad, therefore it's good or bad. And I'll go one step further with the mandates. If you remember New York City, I'll bring up New York City specifically. In New York City, before there were any mandates, any of them, you found a bunch of stores choosing to act safer. So all over, and you saw them. So yes, I said heads nod. That's what's happening. They were buying the little 6-foot stickers in their stores and asking people to be 6 feet apart. They were taking their aisles and making them one-way aisles. Remember that? Where you just go one way down the aisle, one way down the other. They were doing that kind of stuff, right? They were doing things already on their own. They didn't care if they were Republican, Democrat, conservative. That didn't matter. It was like, oh, I'm gonna do these things. And some stores didn't. And some people felt more comfortable and they would go in those stores and some didn't. Remember, some stores had specific times for the elderly to come in and they put their mask up when the 65 olders came in. Remember, they were doing that? They were doing things like that to protect the elderly. They were doing these things. If we had just left them alone, but asked for transparency, we would know what works, wouldn't we? And the communities would too. Because within your community, you know, that guy's store doesn't have a mask. Her store has a mask. Who's getting sick? Who's not? Is there no difference? They don't really work, do they? Is there a difference? Okay, they work. Or the reverse, maybe people with the mask are getting more sick. So whatever, but whatever the issue is, we would know. The communities would know what's working. Who's requiring vaccines? Who's not? We would know. There wouldn't be any question. We wouldn't have to go to our talking head and have them tell us what's happening. The communities would figure it out. There'd be no question. We'd know. And more importantly, masks, vaccines, all these things, mandates, wouldn't be political. They'd be personal, as they should be. As they should be. I had a city councilman in New York City say publicly, we should all wear masks for solidarity. So he said, for solidarity. That's the wrong reason to wear a mask, right? If you believe they work, please wear them. But not for solidarity. That's the wrong reason to be wearing a mask. Wear one because you believe it works. So please wear one, absolutely, go ahead. But for solidarity? He's literally making the mask purposely, openly political. Wow, was that a bad idea? And the second they mandated it, it became political. And it should never be political. Your health should not be political. And it was. So while they say you got to do it, you got to do it, what they actually did was make it worse. Mandates made things worse. It made all those things political. And now people, if you're someone who your talking head has told you masks work, you're not going to hear they don't work. If your talking head told you they don't work, you're not going to hear they work. It doesn't matter. You're not going to hear it. And people go, well, let me show you the facts. My talking head said they do or don't work, so that's my facts. I don't care about your data. It doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Because my talking head gave me one idea or the other, so therefore it's true. That's what we went to. So I get what they're saying, but if you look at what the outcome is, it's not good. So my argument to them would be, is the outcome good? What's the outcome you want? Do you want the outcome to be people feeling safer, being safer, people having more control of their own lives? Do you want us knowing reality? Or do you want the outcome for us to be more divided than ever? If you want divided than ever, let's go your route, because that's what's happening. That's what's happening. Does that make sense at least? Yeah. Awesome, great. Any other question or comment? Great, guys, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. I'll be back on next week. Thank you.